The glass walls of Ardent Dynamics, a high-tech logistics firm, gleamed under the city skyline. Inside, everything was sharp edges and cold efficiency, just the way Ethan Cole, the company's CEO, liked it. Ethan was the kind of man who believed emotions were weaknesses. His company had grown from a small startup into a multi-million-dollar operation through one principle: cut what slows you down. And that morning, sitting in his corner office overlooking downtown Chicago, he was about to prove it again. Across the desk sat Clara James, a single mother and one of Ardent's longest-serving employees. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her termination letter. "Mr. Cole, please," she said, her voice cracking. "I just need another month. My son, he's sick. I can't lose this job." Ethan didn't look up from his tablet. "It's not personal, Clara. We're restructuring. We need efficiency, not sympathy." Tears welled in her eyes. "But I've been here for 8 years. I trained half the team that's still here." Ethan sighed, pressing a button on his desk to call HR. "That's precisely why it's time to move on. We need new energy. You'll get a small severance package and 2 weeks insurance extension." Clara swallowed hard. "You don't even know what I've done for this place." Finally, Ethan looked up, his blue-gray eyes cold and distant. "You were a good employee. But this is business." She stood slowly, her dignity barely holding together. "One day, you'll learn business isn't everything." "Maybe," Ethan said, "but until that day, I'll still be CEO." And with that, she left his office, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor, the only sound in the silence that followed. That night, Ethan dined in a rooftop restaurant with investors, boasting about his company's record quarter. "We're leaner, faster, and stronger than ever," he said, raising his glass. But what he didn't notice, what no spreadsheet could show, was the growing unrest within his company. Departments were disorganized. Key systems were glitching. Morale was at an all-time low. And in a few short weeks, his empire would start to crumble. Because the woman he fired, the one he dismissed as non-essential, was the only one who truly knew how to keep his company running. And soon, he'd be begging for her help. 3 months after Clara James was fired, Ardent Dynamics was a company in free fall. What had once been a gleaming symbol of Ethan Cole's ambition now ran on panic and confusion. Systems crashed. Deadlines were missed. Clients pulled out. It started small, a data sync issue between the company's shipping software and warehouse systems. Then it spread like wildfire. Entire logistics routes failed, orders vanished mid-transport, and overnight, millions of dollars worth of contracts hung by a thread. The one person who could have stopped it before it started was gone. Ethan slammed his office door shut. His vice president of operations, Tom Benson, stood across from him, sweating. "How did this happen?" Ethan demanded, pacing. "We spent millions on automation." Tom rubbed his temples. "Automation isn't the problem. The integration is. The new system isn't talking to the old databases. Clara used to handle that manually. Then fix it." Ethan barked. Tom shot him a desperate look. "We can't. No one else knows her process. She built half of those workarounds herself." Ethan froze. "You are telling me my entire company is falling apart because of one fired employee?" Tom hesitated. "One brilliant one." That night, Ethan stayed in his office long after everyone else had gone home. The city lights shimmered beyond the window, but his computer screen glared with error logs and red warnings. He scrolled through old reports, team emails, and there it was. Clara's name on nearly every critical document. Database migration. Shipment scheduling. Vendor coordination. He'd fired the backbone of his own operation. For the first time, the unshakable CEO felt something unfamiliar: fear. The next morning, things got worse. The company's biggest client, Atlas Global Logistics, called with an ultimatum. Their representative, Susan Hill, didn't mince words. "Ethan, your systems are costing us hundreds of thousands. If this isn't fixed in 72 hours, our contract is terminated." Ethan rubbed his forehead. "Susan, give me until Monday. We're close." "No," she said firmly. "You're not. We'll find another partner." The line went dead. Ethan stared at his reflection in the dark screen. The man who prided himself on control had none left. That evening, he drove home through pouring rain, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. The city blurred around him, lights, sounds, memories, and suddenly, he thought of Clara's last words. "One day, you'll learn business isn't everything." At the time, he laughed. Now, those words echoed like a prophecy. He pulled over, opened his laptop, and found Clara's number buried in HR's old termination records. His finger hovered over the call button. No. He shut the laptop. "I don't need her. I'll find someone else." But the next morning, when 2 servers went down and an entire warehouse in Dallas stopped processing orders, he didn't hesitate. He grabbed his phone and called. The line rang twice before a tired voice answered. "Hello." "Clara," Ethan said quickly. "It's Ethan Cole. From Ardent." There was a pause. "You have a lot of nerve calling me." "I know," he said, trying to keep his tone calm. "But I need your help." "You mean the company that fired me needs my help?" "Yes." Clara sighed. "I have a new job now, Mr. Cole." "This isn't about me," Ethan said. "It's about saving the jobs of everyone still there. People you trained. People who need that company to survive." There was another long silence. Then, quietly, she said, "I'll think about it." And for the first time in his career, Ethan Cole, the man who never took no for an answer, waited. Waited for mercy. Waited for the woman he discarded to save the company that had thrown her away. By Monday morning, Ardent Dynamics was hanging by a thread. Investors were panicking, clients were threatening lawsuits, and the company's internal systems had collapsed into chaos. The normally pristine glass headquarters now felt like a sinking ship. And at the center of it all stood Ethan Cole, stripped of the confidence that once defined him. He hadn't slept in 2 days. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie loose, his phone constantly buzzing with bad news. But there was one message he couldn't stop staring at, a reply from Clara James. "I'll come in tomorrow. But not for you, for the people still there." That was all it said. Yet, it hit him harder than any rejection ever could. When she walked through the doors of Ardent the next morning, the whole office went silent. Gone was the tired woman who'd left in tears. Clara carried herself with quiet strength now, her hair tied back neatly, her expression calm but guarded. Ethan stepped forward. "Clara. Thank you for coming." She didn't shake his hand. "Let's skip the pleasantries. Where's the problem?" He led her to the operations floor, explaining everything, the crashes, the missing shipments, the angry clients. Clara listened carefully, her eyes scanning the screens, her fingers already typing. "You overwrote the primary sync code," she said flatly after a moment. "And removed all the redundancy layers I built." Ethan frowned. "I was told they were outdated." She looked at him, not with anger, but disbelief. "Those outdated systems are what kept your company running." He swallowed hard. "Can you fix it?" "Yes," she said. "But not overnight. I'll need full access, and I'll need my old team back." "Done," he said immediately. She glanced at him. "And one more thing." "Anything?" "You don't speak to me like my boss. You fired me. Right now, you work for me." Ethan blinked, then, slowly, nodded. "Understood." For the next 48 hours, Clara barely slept. She worked through the night, guiding the remaining tech staff, rewriting code, restoring servers, and recalibrating the logistics AI. Ethan watched from the sidelines, humbled by the efficiency and authority she carried. The same woman he had dismissed as expendable was commanding his company like a general. At one point, around 2 a.m., he brought her a cup of coffee. She looked up from the monitor, surprised. "You brought that?" He nodded. "Least I can do." She took it but said nothing. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "I was wrong, Clara." She didn't look at him. "I know." He exhaled. "You could have walked away. Let me fail." She turned to face him. "You didn't fire me from my purpose, Ethan. You fired me from your ignorance. And I don't help people out of revenge." He stared at her, guilt tightening in his chest. "Why help at all?" "Because there are good people here, single parents, students, people who depend on this job. I'm not saving your company for you. I'm saving it for them." He nodded slowly. "Still. Thank you. Clara gave a tired smile. Don't thank me yet. We've got 40 servers left to restore. By the end of the third day, the systems were back online. The shipments resumed. The clients, including Atlas Global, rescinded their termination notice. Ardent Dynamics had survived. When the dust finally settled, Clara stood in the same office where she had been fired months before. Ethan joined her, no longer towering behind the desk but standing beside her. "You saved us," he said quietly. She shrugged. "I fixed what you broke." He smiled faintly. "That's fair." There was a long silence before he added, "You know, Clara, if you come back permanently, you could name your salary." She laughed, a dry, weary laugh. "Money isn't what I wanted when I asked you to keep me on, Ethan. Respect was." He looked away, ashamed. "Then let me give you that now." She nodded. "We'll see if you mean it." And with that, she walked out of his office, not as an employee, not as a victim, but as the woman who had saved the empire that once cast her aside. The crisis had passed, but Ethan Cole felt no victory. The numbers on his recovery report meant nothing compared to the weight of humility he carried. For the first time in his life, the CEO wasn't the most powerful person in the building. That title, though unofficial, belonged to Clara James, the woman he once fired without hesitation. And now, she was the only reason Ardent Dynamics was still alive. The board of directors called an emergency meeting. Ethan expected to be torn apart. Instead, they were focused on Clara. "Mr. Cole," said Mr. Latimer, the chairman, "your leadership nearly cost us the company. Ms. James, however, saved it. We're proposing a new role for her, Chief Operations Officer." Ethan looked up, stunned. "COO?" Clara remained calm, her hands folded neatly in front of her. "She's earned it," Latimer continued. "She knows the systems, the people, and clearly understands the company's values better than you did." Ethan felt his throat tighten, but he didn't argue. For the first time in his career, he saw a promotion he wanted go to someone who deserved it more. He turned to her and said quietly, "Congratulations." Clara nodded. "Thank you." There was no triumph in her tone, only professionalism, and maybe a hint of grace. Over the following months, the company transformed. Under Clara's leadership, Ardent Dynamics rebuilt not just its systems but its culture. Departments began working together again. Employees were heard, respected, and supported. For the first time in years, the company felt human. And while Ethan remained CEO in title, it was clear that Clara's influence was what kept the business thriving. He watched her lead with empathy, the very quality he once dismissed as weakness, and realized that the best leaders weren't those who commanded power. They were the ones who understood people. One evening, long after most employees had gone home, Ethan walked into Clara's office. She was at her desk, reviewing plans for a new mentorship program aimed at helping working parents. "You really think this'll work?" he asked softly. She looked up, surprised by his gentler tone. "I do. These people deserve balance. You can't build loyalty by breaking them." He nodded, taking a slow breath. "You know, I used to think compassion got in the way of business. Turns out it's the only thing that keeps it alive." Clara smiled faintly. "That's a lesson I learned the hard way, too. Just from the other side of the desk." Ethan smiled back, rueful but sincere. "And now you're teaching me." She chuckled. "Guess we both grew up." He paused at the doorway. "Clara, I was wrong. About everything. You didn't just save this company, you saved me from myself." Her expression softened. "Ethan, I didn't save you. You chose to listen. That's the real change." Months later, Ardent Dynamics was stronger than ever, not just profitable, but respected. The company became a model for inclusive corporate culture, winning awards for ethics and employee care. When journalists asked Ethan how he turned things around, he always said the same thing. By realizing that success isn't about who leads, it's about who you're willing to learn from. And whenever he said it, he would glance toward Clara across the boardroom, calm, composed, and brilliant, the woman who proved that empathy could rebuild an empire.